generations to come.
Good morning. It's February 1st at 10:35 a.m. in the East Coast. This is this week's edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast, brought to you by our friends at Keeneland. I'm Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the Thoroughbred Daily News and the co-host of the Down the Stretch radio show on Sirius XM Radio every Saturday at 10 a.m. to 1 Eastern, Channel 85.
And I'm Randy Moss with NBC Sports, fresh off our telecast of the Pegasus World Cup.
Zoe Cadman here with Santanita, First Racing and XBTV. And woohoo! Dry January is over, guys. This is just a pity, but, you know.
Is this get sloshed February, Zoe?
Monsoon February, at least for the first week. Don't tell the buses that.
Yeah. All right. I know, guys, we get sick of the talk about HISA, and sometimes it is just like, driving a nail into your skull because it's can be tedious, it's complicated, it's frustrating, etc. But there was another big development in the HISA saga on what today is Wednesday, so that would have been yesterday, Tuesday, and back in court. So here's the background, if you remember. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals said it was unconstitutional because the Federal Trade Commission did not have enough authority, and HISA had all the authority. The HISA folks went back, got the laws changed, and the wording in the law changed around to make it as if not as if, but to give the Federal Trade Commission more authority and less authority to HISA. The reason why is because the court had ruled that as it was unconstitutional. Lo and behold, the court came back yesterday and said, too bad about this new language. It's not good enough. It's still unconstitutional. We have ruled, and HISA is unconstitutional. Again, not digging too deep in the weeds. We'll leave that to our friend Dan Ross from the Thoroughbred Daily News. I don't know how he does it with some of these stories that he writes on HISA and all the details. But Randy, I'm not a lawyer. There's a lot of these things that I don't understand here, but it looks to me like this might be a death knell.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer. I don't even play one on TV, and I have no idea how this is going to end up, but it's obviously not good for the pro-HISA people, because their attorneys, as I was told, were confident that the changing of the language would alleviate the concerns that the Court of Appeals had, and that HISA, they thought, could then be given the green light. And instead, it's pretty much an emphatic red light. The HBPA has clearly had HISA in its crosshairs. And they've used, for one reason or another, and they've used the constitutionality of HISA, their view of that, as the primary mode right now to attack HISA in court. If it wasn't the constitutionality of it, they would have found something else to try to pick against it. They do not want HISA implemented, again, for one reason or another. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Maybe the HBPA will get its wish.
Yeah, I honestly am at a loss for words. I don't know what to say. I'm sick of it. Imagine someone from another sport, another business, looking in on horse racing, the little round oval with everybody in it. Imagine them looking in. It's laughable. It's a laughing stock. We're trying to police ourselves. We can't even do that. I mean, it's frustrating. It's annoying. I don't know where we go from here. I'm sick of it, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, Zoe, succinctly, I think you kind of summed up the way a lot of us feel. Now, there's more legal things to happen. There's another court, the Sixth Circuit. This ruling yesterday was from the Fifth Circuit that is also dealing with this case. If they rule in favor of HISA, then you would have two different courts with exact opposite rulings. Then there's some sentiment that the Supreme Court would then take up the case. But that's an awful lot of ifs. And, at the end of the day, I'm a pro-HISA fan. I still, for the life of me, have never really understood the serious and almost vitriolic movement by the National HBPA, their feelings toward this. I mean, that this is some sort of, bugaboo that this is just the sport has to, they have to eradicate. I don't quite get it. I mean, I think they've been using the constitutionality. I know they've been using the constitutionality aspect of it as an argument because they know they can use that argument to win in court. I don't think a bunch of trainers are sitting around the shed row in the morning and really arguing about the merits of whether or not this is constitutional or not. But, at the end of the day, you're right, Zoe. I mean, we're going to be right back to where we started. And, we kind of look like the gang that couldn't shoot straight. that horse racing couldn't come together and move forward on something that not everybody, but an awful lot of people thought was really very necessary for the future of the sport.
Yeah, I mean, going back decades, there have been arguments that the sport needed some kind of internal policing, such as HISA would provide. And the HPPA and some others within the industry have always preached the same mantra. No, we can do it ourselves. We don't need government involvement. Horse racing can take care of it itself. And it never has. The Navarro service incident just pointed out glaringly the lack of oversight that the thoroughbred racing industry has enabled of itself. And I'm pro HISA as well, but I understand that, some of the arguments against it, but all in all, I thought HISA was a good thing, and we'll just see what happens. It's going to be interesting and very impactful, I think, to the future of the business.
I'd like to see their plan. If the HBPA have indeed killed HISA, I want to see their plans moving forward for a better option.
Well, Zoe, I think their plan is no plan. I think their plan is the status quo. And, that's the one thing I do agree with you. If you're so against this, come up with a solution, because I think if they're saying there's no problem, if you don't have a solution, then you must be saying there's no problem. Well, there is a problem. I mean, that is obvious, and we need some sort of solution to that. But I tell you what, enough of that for now. Let's get on to something that it's a little bit more fun. The Eclipse Awards. And Flightline, of course, was named Horse of the Year. It was an interesting night. I mean, there were a couple divisions that you went into it beforehand. You weren't entirely sure who was going to win. You were kind of, thought, and that's more fun than you just have, okay, so-and-so wins the so-and-so division with 172 votes and some horse got one. All those no-brainers. I thought all along, we talked about this, the most interesting division was the 3-year-old male colt division. And no surprise, I didn't vote for Epicenter. I voted for Taba. I'm not the least bit surprised. Epicenter won 155 to Taba 66. So that Malibu, apparently, where'd Zoe go? Apparently that Malibu win didn't do oh, there you go. Okay, I like that. What? All right. So now we know why you voted for Epicenter. They bribed you with a free jacket, right? Right. So.
I went to Coolmore yesterday. I flew to Kentucky and I visited Lane's End and saw Flightline, and I went to Coolmore and saw a bunch of the stallions and picked up some swag. So I voted for Epicenter. So I'm very happy.
All right. Randy, are you very happy about the outcome of that division?
Well, I mean, Look, I could have gone either way. I thought you could make a compelling case for Taba as well. I mean, in the end, I thought Epicenter deserved to be the 3-year-old champion. I didn't really see any surprises at all in the Eclipse. So I think I voted for every one of the winners except Apprentice Jockey. That was the only one that had a different outcome than I would have wanted. I thought the 3-year-old and champion trainer were the two most contentious categories. I thought it was almost a coin flip between Todd Pletcher and Chad Brown. In the end, I thought Pletcher probably deserved it because of his 1-2 finish in the Belmont Stakes and because he won more Breeders' Cup races than Chad did. But I thought it was a very formful night at the Breakers in Palm Beach.
I thought maybe the steeplechase was a bit of a surprise to me. And this is the power of social media. Shark Hanlon has been very popular on social media. He's a big personality, a big figure, and a lot of people that don't know a whole lot about the steeplechase racing in this country, I think just got on the Shark bandwagon. I'm not saying he's not deserving. He was incredible when he won over here, but he had one start. I mean, one start. I just don't see the fairness in that.
Zoe, I couldn't agree more. That was the one. And it's, it's the least important division. I mean, there was 27 abstentions in the voting, but the voters got that wrong. I mean, the Snap decision was a horse that raced all year long. He even ran third in a flat stakes race. I don't know if you should count that in the steeplechase voting, but he should have won that one. And, maybe all the people that say that they don't know anything about steeplechase racing, so therefore don't vote, maybe they have a point because they voted for the wrong horse there. In the trainer race, Randy, I agree. That was a flip of a coin. I also voted for Todd Pletcher, and it was 108 to 95. Do you think anybody penalized Chad Brown for his off-the-track problems this year?
It's entirely possible. I think it would be a shame if it was the case, because I think things like that, just like with Bob Baffert and Medina Spirit, I know a lot of people didn't vote for Medina Spirit last year for champion 3-year-old because of Baffert's medication transgressions. It would be a shame if that happened. I think it should be based totally on track performance, but it wouldn't surprise me if it had some role in it.
The Eclipse Award swayed me. I mean, Todd Pletcher's Eclipse Award ballot certainly swayed me. But other than that, I mean, you can make a case for either. And this is where human voting gets in with Shark Hanlon, with Chad Brown. I mean, these are human emotions that nobody can control or foresee. And a lot of that has something to do. It's not purely on facts and figures.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it cost Chad Brown the Eclipse Award or not, but I would agree with you, Randy. It shouldn't have. It shouldn't have. It's not something that anybody should have weighed into the voting. I don't think it should matter what the guy did as a horse trainer this year. And he had an absolutely excellent year. But having said that, I voted for Pletcher because many of the same reasons that you said. I mean, the 3 Eclipse Award winners, the 1-2 in the Belmont Stakes, a really special year. Then I was interested too. We knew there was going to be some backlash against Flightline, and there was. There were 7 votes that were either for an other horse for Horse of the Year or abstentions. I mean, someone voted for Country Grammar for Horse of the Year, which is just silly. I honestly thought there might be a little bit more of a backlash, that, there might be 25 no votes for Flightline. So by and large, everybody seemed to be okay with the 3-race season that he had. We all wish it were, 6, 7, 8 races. It is what it is. But I mean, he was the horse of the year. There was no doubt about it. And again, I'm not going to scream at the people that decided not to vote for him, or everybody take their votes away and that kind of stuff. No, a couple people made us tried to make a statement, but just only a couple. At the end of the day, Flightline was as dominant as you would have expected.
Yeah, I mean, I put that in the same category with what I said about Baffert and what I said about Chad Brown. I mean, for someone not to vote for Flightline, as brilliant as he was for Horse of the Year, because they have an axe to grind with the ownership retiring him, what they consider to be prematurely, I think it's not fair. And it shouldn't be factored in. But clearly with 6 people, I suppose it was.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. And as we just discussed, guys, all 10 horses recognized as flat racing champions at the Eclipse Awards have a connection to Keeneland, either through the auctions or the races. Listen to this. 7 champions were graduates of the Keeneland sales, including 6 alumni of the September sale. Horse of the Year and Older Dirt male Flightline won the Breeders' Cup Classic at Keeneland, and 2 days later at Keeneland's November sale, a 2.5 ownership interest sold for $4.6 million. So if you want to get to the Eclipse Awards, I think you better start shopping at Keeneland. We'll be right back after these messages from Keeneland.
If this place could talk, it would roar. It would say, "This is racing." This beating heart in the heart of horse country. Steady and strong beneath the roar. Reminding us why. For the love of the horse. For generations to come.
Speightstown. Munning. Echo Town.
It's Echo Town for Joe Talamo, and Echo Town raced away.
And Echo Town is drawing away in the stretch. Echo Town wins the Alan Jerkin Stakes.
A sire line so prolific, it repeats itself. Echo Town.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Coolmore. Now, if I look a bit bleary-eyed, I just got back from Kentucky, and I did get a chance to visit Coolmore. Picked up some nice Epicenter swag, and according to the guys, they've never seen a horse come to them straight from the races as good as Epicenter looked. He arrived there in fine fettle. Obviously, he got hurt in the Breeders' Cup Classic, but he's going to go on to a stellar stud career. I also got a chance to visit Corniche, my old favorite. I haven't seen him since last summer, and he's filled out into a big, beautiful, gorgeous son of Quality Road. And seeing Quality Road and then taking a look at Corniche, he's just going to look just like his daddy. I also got a chance to see Jack Christopher. I haven't seen him since Saratoga as well. Beautiful looking son of Munning's got that lovely big swaggery walk. And then Golden Pal is everything as advertised as well. If you want to take a look at a good looking horse who doesn't look like a sprinter, go to Coolmore and check out Golden Pal.
Lots of good sires at Coolmore, especially that freshman class that they're bringing in. Hey, guys, let's go look now at the last week's Pegasus World Cup. Coming up after this segment, we'll hear from Bruce Lunsford, the owner of Art Collector. I thought the race was pretty much what we might have expected. It was a wide open affair. It was quote unquote the proverbial great betting race. Did not really have any superstars in the lineup. But, and Art Collector was, as a handicapper to me, was very hard to come up with. But, coming up with a winner in that race was pretty much impossible. I mean, I think, the best thing you could have done is put the program page up and just thrown darts at it. But hey, take nothing away from Art Collector. He ran, no doubt, the best race of his life. He won by 4.5 lengths over Defunded, Bob Baffert's horse that came in from the West Coast. And, it was a good race. It was a great day of racing. The betting, I want to get into that a little bit later, was just through the roof. And I'm sure the people at First Racing were very satisfied with the day. And Art Collector was, at the end of it, the star, Brandy.
Oh, clearly the best horse. If you had known that Art Collector was going to be, back in peak form, like the form that he had when he won the Woodward or some of those Charlestown races or the Bluegrass as a 3-year-old, the Ellis Park race right after that. I mean, he had some really good races back on his form. But his most recent race in the Lucas Classic, he really laid an egg. I mean, that was a race that was not a particularly strong race the way it finished. By the clock, it was a very disappointing sort of race where Hot Rod Charlie beat Rich Strike. And Art Collector set a nice, reasonable pace in that race and then just basically fell apart the last quarter of a mile. It was hard to like Art Collector, even knowing Bill Mott does so well with horses coming off layoffs off of that Lucas Classic. And I think Kieran McLaughlin, a smart guy, the jockey agent of Luis Saez, thought the same thing. I mean, he had a choice between putting Saez on Art Collector or putting him on Get Her Number, who was another long shot in there. And he ultimately chose Get Her Number instead. And I think a lot of us kind of felt the same way, that Art Collector might not be quite the same horse that he had been earlier. Congratulations, kudos, I guess I should say, to Bill Mott. Hall of Fame trainers like that can have an impact, not just in preparation of the horse, but in strategy. When we were doing the race for NBC, we try to talk to all the trainers, some of the owners, all the riders beforehand doing our research. Jerry Bailey had a chance to talk to Bill Mott. And Mott told Jerry a couple of days before the race, look, with Defunded in there, with Stiletto Boy in there, I'm going to try to change things up and tell Junior Alvarado to ease Art Collector back off the pace. And we'll try that tactic and see if it works. And I think that was key to the outcome of that race. Maybe he would have been good enough to win anyway because he was dominant. But that change in tactics worked well for him, Zoe.
Well, if I'd have been watching your telecast, I would have known that, because I did not know the tactics going forward. And with Saez jumping ship, he's always been a very good horse, but to me, always maybe a cut below this year's crop. And boy, did he prove everyone wrong that day. And I think the happiest person there in the winner's circle was Irma Lee Scott, who who was the big mare he had? Elate. When Elate left Bill's barn, I can remember her dragging me into the shed row 2 years ago in 21 and saying, hey, Miss Zoe, I got a new horse. You want to come see my baby? And I'm like, who's your new baby? You just got, Elate just went to the breeding shed. She's like, it's this little horse called Art Collector. And she led me over to Art Collector's stall, and he literally just got there. And he wasn't much to look at. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember him. And over the course of that summer and the months, he filled out into this big, beautiful looking horse. And Irma Lee Scott, that is her baby. She has one baby in Bill's barn every couple of years, and Art Collector is one of them. And I was glad to see her in the winner's circle. I really was.
Yeah, and from a business standpoint, First Racing, the Stronach Group, has really succeeded. They wanted to take this day and turn it into an event, a party, just, something that goes well beyond just a horse race. And, that might not be for everybody. A lot of curmudgeons out there, and it should be about horse racing, not about some, musical act I never heard of because I'm too old and not cool and everything like that. But look at the handle. They handled $43 million on this. And the last time this day was run as something other than the Pegasus World Cup was in 2016, was still the Don Handicap, and they handled $19 million. So they've more than doubled the handle on this race over that period of time, over 7 years. And a lot of that is, that whole fly. We talked with Aidan Butler about it when he was the Green Group Guest of the Week last week about, the importance of getting people to the racetrack, because that's the way you're going to turn them into racing fans. Nobody's going to go on their ADW and bet on the fourth race at Crumb Nuts Downs or whatever, and become a fan of horse racing that way. You have to become somebody who loves the game and sees the horses. So they really hit it on the head there. Also interesting, afterwards, there was a report that they think that they're going to, not that they think, they said, and they were not a lot of specifics, but they're going to have Pegasus races next year at Santa Anita. Now, I don't know if that means they're not going to take things away from Gulfstream. So I don't know if that means there will be two Pegasus World Cups, maybe one in March. Maybe they'll turn the big cap into the Pegasus World Cup West or something like that. But Randy, the business was booming. Interesting thoughts about bringing this concept to the West Coast next year. So lots to talk about there.
Yeah, I was there firsthand. A lot of NBC's telecasts now are done in the studio up in Connecticut, but Belinda Stronach wanted NBC on site at Gulfstream Park, largely to promote the sort of party aspect that you're talking about and show people, exactly what's going on down there. I'm older and I'm uncool, and I'm not a big fan of One Republic or Kygo or Joe Jonas, but I was there at the party afterward with my college-age daughter and her roommate and my wife, who was in the fashion industry. And I'm telling you, it was elbow to elbow as all of our little NBC group pushed our way up to the front of the stage. It was extremely an extremely successful event. And my wife commented, she goes to the Kentucky Derby with me every year. And she said from a fashion and a lifestyle standpoint, the Pegasus World Cup is like a mini Kentucky Derby. They've done a really good job with that. And if they do choose to take it to the West Coast, I don't see why that concept would be any less successful in suburban Los Angeles than it is in suburban Miami.
It'll be a maxi. It'll be a maxi Pegasus party. There is so much more room here at Santa Anita. Just imagine bringing all that west. Now, we were talking about there is another Pegasus statue. Perhaps they'll finally get the rights to erect it here at Santa Anita, because that was the long time dream. But I can't imagine bringing it west, because it's going to be absolutely huge. Now, I wasn't down there this past time. I think I was there for the first 3 or 4, and it was big enough back then. Now, to make it even bigger and bring it west, I think it's going to be fantastic. And First Racing is visionary. They're moving forward. We'll talk in a little bit about the first Saturday series that they're going to have encompassing the first racing tracks this weekend. It'll be Santa Anita and Gulfstream Park. So I think they're just trying to move forward, and whether you like it or not, they're going to shove this right in your face. And Randy, One Republic's old. Have you not? You know One Republic.
I wouldn't know.
You should know One Republic. They're old.
We're always talking about how important it is to introduce younger people to the races, right? Well, standing in front of that stage, and it was like this. It was elbow to elbow. It was like a fraternity party in college. I looked around, and I was definitely the old guy among all the people that were around me, just a sea of young people who were having a fantastic time. Now, how much of that is going to cross over? Will you turn those people into horse racing fans who bet on the races? I don't know. But in terms of bringing young people to the racetrack and showing them a fantastic time, it was a huge success. And the Lane's End Stallion of the Week is the newly minted Horse of the Year, Flightline. The TDN has been conducting a mating plans series where we talk to breeders about their plans for 2023. Last week it was Peter Brandt, which was fascinating. A few mares featured in this series that we know are going to Flightline include Grade 1 winner Dream Tree, Layla, full sister to Express Train, Stakes winner Bayerness, Miss Hot Legs, the half sister to champion Swiss Skydiver, and I was told this past week at Gulfstream that just retired Grade 1 winner Delica strongly being considered for Flightline as well. Flightline stands for $200,000 this year at Lane's End. And now we'll be right back after this message from Lane's End.
Flightline is in full flight. Flightline turns it on at the top of the stretch, and he's in cruise control.
And Flightline takes off!
Take a good look at this, because you're not going to see this too often, maybe never again. Flightline, 20 lengths clear.
World-class racehorse, world-class performance at a world championship event.
Today on the TDN Writers Room, we debut a new segment, the Fastest Horse of the Week, brought to you by the Fast Stallions at WinStar Farm. Typically, it will be the horse with the highest buyer speed figure of the previous week. But before we reveal who last week's winner was, let's hear from one of the fast sires at WinStar. Which WinStar stallion won the Grade 1 Woodward as a 4-year-old, just like his sire Curlin, going wire to wire and earning a 104 buyer? And won the Peter Pan Stakes in 146.71, the second fastest 9-furlong Peter Pan ever. Won 6 of 10 stakes, including 3 graded stakes, earning 4 triple-digit buyers. Well, it's Bolt D'Oro's half-brother global campaign. That's an awful lot of fast for just $10,000 at WinStar. And now the fastest horse of the week. Yes, Art Collector earned a buyer of 107 in the Pegasus World Cup, but a little more than 2 hours and before that, and 1,200 miles north of Gulfstream, 5-year-old gelding Repo Rocks turned in the week's fastest performance by the numbers, earning a 111 buyer speed figure for his 8.5 length victory in the 7-furlong Grade 3 Toboggan Stakes at Aqueduct. It was a fantastic performance for Repo Rocks, who is now 3 for 3 since owner Stephen Fox transferred him last November to Parks Racing's leading trainer, Jamie Ness. The Toboggan was not only Repo Rock's fastest race by far, the Toboggan was his first stakes win in the 32nd race of his career. It was also the first graded win for jockey Andrew Wolfson, who has now transferred his tack from Penn National to Parks Racing. And that 111 buyer for Repo Rocks is the fastest earned by any horse thus far in 2023. The Green Group is an accounting and tax consulting advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry with over 500 clients in the horse business. It has proven strategies to save you taxes. You can learn more at www.greenco.com. And now for the Green Group Guest of the Week.
And we welcome in this week's Green Group Guest of the Week, Bruce Lunsford, the owner of Art Collector, the winner of the Pegasus World Cup Invitational. Bruce, let's break some news here on our podcast. There was some talk after the race that maybe he'd be retired, sent off to stud. He is a stallion. He is 6 years old. What are the plans for 2023?
Well, I haven't had much time to talk to many people, but I did get to talk to one of my 3 top advisors in Seth Hancock yesterday. And I wanted to make sure he was comfortable. I think he really loved the race. He loved everything about it. And he and I've had the history of this horse goes all the way back to Brian Bunning. And that's been 30 years ago, whatever. Bunning had Vision Verse. Bunning had, 2 or 3 other pretty decent horses, and then had this filly that's Distorted Legacy that they always get better as they get older. They all got better as they got older. And that's another reason why I felt we had a lot of issues with his heel, the front heel, that caused us a lot of delays. And Bill and Tommy, everybody that had him, you'd work at it, you work on it. But this time, we gave the horse plenty of time. And Bill, Bill's a magician. He's almost a veterinarian. He finally figured out how to get it. And he made a point of showing me the other day how it's there, and he can push it and do all that stuff. And I think it made a big difference. And so if he continues to hold up, he'll get several chances during the year, I think, to race.
Well, it's great news, Bruce. Congratulations, by the way. It's great news that fans will get a chance to see more of our collector. Before we came on the air here for the podcast, we were talking about your philosophy about running horses and giving fans a chance to see the horses. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, part of what's helped me in the business is having good mentors. And W.T. Young was a really close friend to me. Did a lot of nice things for me. He gave me a couple of seasons in Stormcat early. One was with Vision and Verse, and another one that did okay. But I learned from him. You give and then you get back. And what I feel like is, what's 1 year in your life if you keep them one more year on the track? Or, what does it mean if you make your stallion shares at a reasonable price to get more people involved? And I think you find you get rewarded in many ways. And I felt like in this case, it's pretty well made the decision if he didn't get blistered in the race that we would run him. And I'll have more information with Seth and all that, but Bill's been told by me that if he does well, we'll continue. And I think that was a pretty good race the other day. It gives us a chance to take that shot. And, I remember the old days. I remember the old days when they made Secretary to horse because of what they did with Penny and all that. I remember with Bull Hancock when he was engaged in the game and the way Travers became such a big race, and then the upsets at Saratoga, all these things that people actually got engaged in. We're in a society of doing this all the time. And I think those of us in the horse business who like the horse business want to enjoy it. And it wasn't meant to be your main source of living for everybody. It was meant to be, something like owning a baseball team or a football team or something. And I think we need some owners that have the capability. Judd Mott will race them for a while. Some of these other guys will. And certainly, even the guy that owns Rich Strike, this is an experience of a lifetime. He's going to keep that horse on as long as we stand it, I think. And I feel like we need more of that in the game. If you watch the Super Bowl playoffs and all that, you see how much it takes out of people, how many get hurt, how many things happen, but they still show up every day and they still get to the field. And I love excitement. That was terrific excitement. Makes your blood pumped and your friends. I know you don't know all these guys, but when we watched it in the paddock, where you got the big TVs and that. And I had two close friends there, Greg Hudson, Jim Navolio, and David York. And when he passed the finish line, I had one hit me from the back, one hit me from the front, one hit me from the side. I thought I was about out of breath, but we made it out there okay.
Bruce, is the Saudi Cup and the Dubai World Cup, are they possibilities then?
Well, I went over last year with him or 2 years ago in the Saudi race. He didn't like the track. Nothing against the people in Saudi Arabia, but I'm not a big fan of Saudi Arabia. I actually stayed in Dubai and flew over to Saudi and then flew back to Dubai because Dubai's a pretty good place and I'd been there before. And if I had the right horse, I would consider Dubai at some point, but I think I've had enough with this horse. We'll figure it out later. I think he's going to get good shots. And I talked to Seth about this yesterday, and I've talked to Bill about it, but not in picketing any spot. We're going to let the horse tell us. I could give you a list of 10 races that would fit him this year, but I want to make sure we do what we did here. We took our time and we got to the right spot because he's really a lovable horse. He works hard. He's got a great caretaker, and after the race, he was full of himself. I let him in, but he was like my dog. I got a big dog, weighs about 105 pounds, and she does the same thing the horse was doing. I think that's a part of the sport people need to see. If you take the whiskey industry in Louisville and what they've done to make it a major industry in the last 5 to 10 years, it's unbelievable. I think we got to rethink that. And we may not be a whole United States sport. We may be more like NASCAR. California is hanging on by their fingernails because it's just hard to get horses in races. If you look at the races this week for the Derby, pre-Derby races, You got 4-1 and 5 in another. I don't think that attracts fans like a big field. I mean, we had 12 horses, or we had 10 horses or whatever we had in the race the other day, and we had 2 on the also eligible list. That's what bettors want to see.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be a guy who picked out of 12 horses. I know you feel that way, Randy, because you've been doing this stuff a long time. And I think that's going to be the secret. I know we got HISA and all these other things of debate, but the real debate is, if you think about the horse first and the industry second, we'll get there. You just got to get the right players doing it.
So one of the issues that he had in the Saudi Cup last year was that he was totally rushed off his feet to try to get to the early lead in what turned out to be a very fast-paced race. Conversely, in the Pegasus, one of the keys to winning, I thought, was the change in tactics, where he was reserved a little bit off the pace. How did that conversation go pre-race between you and Bill Mott and maybe Junior Alvarado?
Well, Junior's his guy, and Louis great speed rider. I'd put him over anybody. He and I ran are probably the 2 that can ride like that on a regular basis. But the issue happened. We also had a race at Churchill, by the way, which all the races I've won, all the stakes, but I've only won 1 in Churchill Downs, and I've raced more there than anywhere. But he got the lead fairly easily in there. But Hot Rod Charlie stayed on him the whole way, and he quit. And that's when I thought about, well, maybe this is it. And then we just I said, Bill, take him home, and we'll just think about it and watch what happens, how he progresses. And we thought about going to a couple of other races, but in the end, I trust Bill's ability to get a horse ready for a big race better than anybody I know. And if we got in a race to get to the Derby, I'd tell him, take 6 weeks off and let's go. I don't care. You do what you want to do. And for him, and you've seen him do this for years. I know you guys have, where he gets a horse off of 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. It brings them to the race and they run through the wind. And he did it again. This was a great masterpiece on his part. And I do think, personally, I think he's the best trainer in the business.
Well, speaking of Bill Mott, let's not forget that Tom Drury was the original trainer, did a nice job, but midway through 2021, you made the decision to go to Mott. Could you talk about why you made that decision? And the horse is 6 for 8 since you've done that, so obviously it worked out well. And then, just what a difference Mott has made.
Well, there were a couple things that happened earlier. First of all, I gave him to Joe Sharp. And then Sharp had his stuff with when they took a race from me or others. Now, and I like Joe, and I still like Joe, but I just don't want to have that environment around me with my horses. I don't want to have controversy in that. You have enough in business and everything else. And so I just brought him home. Tommy's been a home trainer for me for a long time. He took care of Madcap, brought her off. He takes care of Delika for Al Stall, and we have an incredibly close relationship. And but when we had the last race at Churchill Downs, I just sat back and I went in and talked to Tommy, and I know it was a punch in the gut for him, but I said I want to go to New York because there are the races that get ready for the other races. You've got great jockeys, not good jockeys. You got great jockeys. You got a lot of things in the favor. And Bill Mott has, we go way back to Vision and Verse and other horses. And when I got through with talking to him about it, staying in touch with him and letting him deal with my other horses, we're probably closer now than we've ever been. Mm-hmm. He's a partner in the horse because I want him to be, and we've kept a great relationship. My wife loves his daughter. I mean, we just have a lot of times with them, and so I think I made the decision on the right terms. Took a little heat for it, and just kept my mouth shut and let it happen. And when we got ready and won the Aladar the first year off of that long layoff, I thought it was impressive. I thought it did everything I wanted to get done. And then the next race, of course, was our favorite, the Charlestown Classic. I think it's a great race. It's like old school. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been there, but it's like old school there. And everybody loves Art Collector there. They all got trophies and pictures and stuff of him and that. But, sometimes you got to do those things.
So you mentioned the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act, HISA, the politics of racing right now, and they're kind of colliding with other politics as far as HISA goes. Now, most people in the sport know Bruce Lunsford as the owner of Art Collector and Vision and Verse and Madcap Escapade and First Samurai and all these other great horses you've had. A lot of the people in Kentucky know you as the guy who in 2008 gave Mitch McConnell the scare of his political career when you ran for his Senate seat and very nearly beat him.
Well, if he hadn't gotten so much money at the end, I would have beat him, but it kept coming in droves. He gave all his staff time off, to come in here and campaign against me, walking beside me everywhere I went. But you're right. And, it was a great experience, but it taught me a lot.
$20 million apparently is what Mitch McConnell spent to have to beat you in that 2008 race. So now McConnell,
that was his extra. That was his extra money. Oh, he really spent over 30. I mean, but it was that's what life's about. I mean, I'm in it to play. There's the country. I like the words in country songs where the guy says, if you have a dream, chase it because the dream won't chase you back. I like that song. That's a good word. That's a way to look at it. I've had a lot of dreams. Some of them come true. Some of them don't. This is a case where actually one came true pretty well. It wasn't the Derby, but it's a pretty close experience.
So you're very involved in politics. You're very involved in horse racing. McConnell's behind HISA now. It seems to be a bipartisan push. What's your opinion about that particular piece of legislation?
Well, I think some form of it's got to pass. I wish that we would. Let's go back to personal interests again. You go back to personal interests. Like, I don't think guys that retire horses are thinking about what they're doing to the people that watch the horse, love the horse, and everything else. I think they're thinking about, how do they keep the farm alive? How do we make all these expenses? Now, some of them don't need that. But the other side of the coin is that a lot of people, like let's take the union or the guild or whatever it is that takes care of all the people other than the rich, players in the game. They're battling it because it limits them some, and they're being pumped to battle it because there are people in their best interest are not to have HISA around. In my thought process, I think it should be around, and I think it should have strict rules. But Randy, the one thing about the industry that they haven't done, we don't give much penalty out. We don't get the vets involved very often. We don't do it to clean house. And I think you got to do that. I mean, look, the only two players that have really suffered, one was Rick Dutrow. And he maybe was overkill in him because he was a good trainer. And the others, and Churchill basically took it on their own back to penalize Bob because he'd had 2 years in a row of damaging the Oaks and the Derby. And I think that's what you got to do. If you're afraid you'll go to jail, if you're afraid that you'll be kicked out of your livelihood or whatever else, you'll do a little differently. I mean, I could name all kinds of players who I thought were gone forever and came back through one of the circles. Good industries don't do that. They don't let that happen. We're also not well known enough publicly. It's not like being a football player or baseball player or big sport with big interests or soccer even. We don't have that kind of an audience. We may be better with a tighter audience. That's why I said earlier about than the car racing. And look at what a job they've done over the years. Formula One is one of the great events I know. It's not my event, but it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting when you watch it. We got to continue to do that, and I do compliment what NBC's trying to do. They're trying to make it more interesting. And, so is Fox. I mean, we got people that are trying. All we got to do is not handcuff them. Take them, put them out there and let them spend their money promoting us the way they have others. Nike's the all-time example how to market.
Well, Bruce Lunsford, we want to thank you so much for your time being the Green Group Guest of the Week. Great to know that Art Collector's coming back and you're determined to race them as often as possible. That's a breath of fresh air in a game where we don't get too many owners to do that. Bruce, thanks again for your time and good luck with Art Collector.
Okay, well, just remember, Bill makes the decisions on that, not me. Okay. I'm not about to take on that risk by myself. All right. Okay. Take care, fellas.
The Green Group Guest of the Week, Bruce Lunsford, will receive a free 1-hour tax consultation. You can learn more about the Green Group, an accounting and tax consulting advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred business at www.greenco.com.
Why do the most successful owners, breeders, and horsemen select the Green Group as their tax advisor? We simply save them money and know how to make them more successful. Over the past 40 years, founder Leonard Green has owned and bred some of the best racehorses in the history of the sport. His in-depth, hands-on industry knowledge, combined with cutting-edge tax-saving strategies, has produced positive results for his clientele and has made the Green Group the top-rated accounting and tax firm in the business. For a confidential and complimentary consultation, contact us at 732-634-5100 or visit our website at www.greenco.com. The Green Group, proven strategies to save you taxes.
Here in Pennsylvania, we're proud of our breeding program, the best in North America. But we're also proud to be leaders in this industry. The PA Horse Breeders Association is funding cutting-edge research at Penn Vet to detect gene doping in thoroughbreds. And we endorsed the SAFE Act to help protect the most vulnerable horses. Plus, we're pleased to support the aftercare programs set up by our horsemen's groups. Just a few of the reasons why you should join us in Pennsylvania, the premier place to breed and race.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by the PHBA. Nominations for the 2-year-old Pennsylvania sired Pennsylvania bred stallion series open now. The nomination fee, $500 if paid by March 31st. A reminder, the series being expanded in 2023. The first 2 races will run at the end of August on the annual Pennsylvania Day at the Races, followed by the second leg on September 23rd, Pennsylvania Derby Day, and the last leg at the end of December.
Well, this part of the podcast each week, we like to do our 3-year-old watch. There were a couple races over the weekend. You had the San Vicente at Santa Anita, but the big story is clearly Arabian Night in the Southwest Stakes. And, you look at this horse and you want to reserve yourself a little bit. Should we really be going overboard about a horse that's only raced twice? And this was his first stakes performance in a grade 3. I think it's okay to go overboard. The $2.3 million 2-year-old purchase has looked phenomenal for Bob Baffert, breaking his maiden at Keeneland, then coming back in the Southwest. Granted, he kind of had everything his own way, but this is a very, very talented racehorse. TD Thornton in the TDN's top 10 I think he does a top 12 for the Kentucky Derby, had Arabian Night number 1 coming into this race. We got to see more. I don't want to get too carried away. But on the other hand, Randy, it's pretty hard not to get very excited about this horse. Even with all Forte has accomplished and the Breeders' Cup winner and Eclipse Award winner, I think this is the best 3-year-old.
Oh, and, we watch him on our computers or watch him on TV or so maybe, watch the workouts. Zoe's seen him firsthand out there. Zoe, and I remember last week you were talking about what an amazing looking specimen he is.
I'm pretty sure I said I'd like to date him, if he was a man. I mean, he is hubba gorgeous. And he ran to his looks. He really did. And I think maybe one of you two were talking about maybe rating him, Baffert, Velasquez. Yeah, sloppy racetrack. Bob's not conceding to anybody. They just went, never looked back, never looked like a loser at any point. He's bred to love the wet track. And I think if you look back the history of all of the Triple Crown preps at Oaklawn, it's always raining. I've been there for enough of them. You pack wellies in a raincoat, even if it says it's going to be 70 and sunny, because it will rain, even if it's right before the start of the race. You will get wet if you're going for a Triple Crown prep. He was fantastic. He's come back in good order, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next. He was squarely much the best in that race.
Now, I thought he was going to, in all fairness, I thought he was going to have to be rated out of necessity because Corona Bolt on the inside had speed, had sprint speed, and having talked to Brad Cox, who was out at Gulfstream Park, I mean, the strategy was to go to the lead with Corona Bolt and force Arabian Night to rate a little bit off of him. But Corona Bolt was a complete no-show. I mean, he was down on the inside, first time on a sloppy track, first time around 2 turns, although it was also the first 2-turn race for Arabian Night. And Corona Bolt just was never a factor at any point early in the race. And the Arabian Night did his thing, as you said he would, and looked extremely impressive. To me, I mean, Baffert's got all these options. He's got all these 3-year-olds. But to me, now it looks like at least partially the Oaklawn route to the Triple Crown would seem to be in play. Although I wonder if they want to ship him twice more from Santa Anita to Oaklawn before the Kentucky Derby. But he's certainly a very nice horse.
Randy, Bob said after the race that he really wants to space this horse's races out, and it would be pretty unconventional, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him again based on that comment until the Arkansas Derby. And Baffert, who doesn't like to travel, he had defunded in the Pegasus World Cup. He had Feza in the Las Virgenes, and he had Arabian Night at Oakland Park. He showed up at Oakland Park. Actually, I really think that shows you what he was thinking of his contingent that day and how special this horse was. A Feza won, and of course, defended was second in a $3 million race. The other prep over the weekend was, somewhat of a prep. The San Vicente. Baffert won with Having a Meltdown. He said afterwards that he thinks this horse is just a sprinter. Maybe the horse that ran second, also, of course, trained by Baffert, Faustin, will be someone to be heard from down the line. And, I know this is a little bit of a sore subject, but we've got to tackle it in some regard here. We've never seen even with Baffert, we've never seen anything like this. 1, 2, 3 in the Sham Stakes, 1, 2, 3 in the San Vicente, Arabian Night, as good as he is. Honestly, right now in the West Coast, Randy, I can't think of off the top of my head any 3-year-old who is a serious Derby contender not trained by Bob Baffert. We're going to see in the Robert Lewis Stakes this Saturday, again, a race, 4 horses, all of them trained by Baffert. To me, it is what it is. You can't blame Baffert. You can't blame his owners. And, but it looks at this point now that there's almost literally no competition for him.
Look, I mean, for all those people who thought that the 2-year ban that Churchill Downs imposed on Baffert would be a serious problem to his racing stable, I don't think it's ever been stronger. I have never seen one trainer as dominant in a major circuit as Bob Baffert is right now at Santa Anita. For the Robert B. Lewis, which we'll be doing on NBC this Saturday, there were 16 horses that were nominated for the Lewis. He had 14 of the 16 nominees. He's got all 4 of the horses that are actually in the race. He's got the best filly in Feza. He's got the 2 best older horses in Taba and Country Grammar. He's got some good older fillies and mares as well. I mean, his stable is just more dominant, I think, than it's ever been. I was putting together a list of past performances for some of the top 3-year-olds, which I try to update every week. And just looking at the Baffert horses, I did past performances on Arabian Night, Reincarnate, who is a really good horse, the winner of the Sham, New Gate, Arabian Lion, Hijazi, Faustin, National Treasure, Having a Meltdown, Speedboat Beach, Gilmore, Mr. Fisk. He's got a whole barn full of them. It's amazing.
Yeah, so maybe we'll see 10 Bafferts in the Derby, 9 Brad Coxes, and Forte from Todd Pletcher. It's kind of looking like that at this point. Okay, so let's talk about the Robert B. Lewis, the 4 Baffert runners in here. Again, and with a lot of these races, he's throwing out the junior varsity and still dominating these races. He's got Arabian Lion, Newgate, Worcester, and Hard to Figure. Hard to Figure would be the real long shot among those 4. I think it's probably comes down to Newgate or Worcester, even though Worcester is still a maiden after 2 lifetime starts. He ran a good second last time out, got a 94 buyer. And again, to show that this isn't just in stakes races, Worcester has run twice in maiden races and both times was beaten by Bob Baffert horses in maiden races. So this extends beyond just the stakes company. But, you're not going to get another Arabian Night out of this race, Randy. But, early on, who do you think is the winner of this thing?
Well, I think Newgate will probably be the favorite, although I think in the Sham Stakes, he trailed early. It was a 5-horse field, and he was only like maybe 4 lengths off the pace. But I thought that was a perfect trip for him in that race because it was an exceptionally fast pace in the Sham that should have played right to Newgate's strengths. And he rolled up to Reincarnate at the top of the stretch like he was going to blow by him. And then at Reincarnate just would not let him by, or Newgate wouldn't go by. I don't know which was which, the chicken or the egg there. But it was a good race numbers-wise for Newgate. Regardless, even though he was beaten in a photo. Arabian Lion, I don't know what happened to him in the Los Alamitos Futurity. He was 2-5 in that race. He got a pretty decent trip, and he came up completely empty for the final quarter mile. He's come back and trained exceptionally well since then. I'll be talking to Bob this week in preparation for our telecast. I'm curious to see what he's got to say about that. You would almost think it would have to be something amiss, an illness or, some explanation for that race for him to come up so empty. And Worcester, he's a maiden, but he had a really good number last time. Worcester and Newgate are both owned by the Avengers. I don't think Santa Anita would have allowed the race to go with a 3-horse field. I'm almost positive they wouldn't. I'm wondering if perhaps because he's a maiden, even though he's a nice horse, Worcester was entered in the Robert B. Lewis to make sure that the race went with a 4-horse field. But regardless, I mean, he's a nice horse and he's got a chance in there, Zoe.
Yeah, he's a very nice horse. But Arabian Lion, I think, is going to be back to tip-top form. I've seen him train. I've seen him in person of late. I don't think anyone really knows quite what happened to him over at Los Al. And sometimes what happens at Los Al stays at Los Al. He's worked formidably well. 58-4 the last time. He had another gate work, 59-3. He's a beautiful looking son of Justify out of the Distorted Humor mare, Unbound. And he'll definitely be the one to beat in here. I think Johnny V will just send him from the get-go. He's drawn in the 1 hole. I think it's going to be all over for Arabian Lion. But I just want to toss in another 3-year-old. I don't know if you guys are watching the races on Sunday. There was a 3-year-old that won very, very nicely, beating a Bob Baffert trained 3-year-old. This one was trained by Dick Mandela, owned now by Pin Oak Stud, the first horse the Bernards bought, and his name is Go Rocket Ride. And he is a beautiful looking horse, and he won like a good thing. So don't be surprised to see Dick Mandela throwing his hat in against Bob Baffert pretty soon.
And I think he got a 91 Buyer speed figure, in that race as well. So he ran fast.
He's a good horse. Yeah. He's a really good horse. Be nice for
Bob to have some competition. All right, so let's head back to Florida for the Gulfstream Park 12th race on Saturday, the Holy Bull. This is the case the big boys have not come out yet. The top talent, including Forte, who's pointing for the Fountain of Youth, are clearly not in this race. Got a couple interesting horses. Cyclone Mischief ran a big race last time out for Dale Romans, jumped up and ran a career best 90 Buyer. Was first time Lasix, has to take Lasix off for this race. Legacy Isle crossed the wire first in the Mucho Macho Man Stakes for trainer Rohan Crichton, but was disqualified. Randy, I don't think we have a Kentucky Derby winner in this field, but could be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, the big boys aren't out yet, but Dale Romans thinks he's got a big boy, and Cyclone Mischief. He's well-bred. He's buy into Mischief. He looked really good in that 1 mile allowance win with that 90 Buyer speed figure. Before that, he ran in the Kentucky Jockey Club. Instant Coffee beat him. And he was up on a pace that was very slow that you'd think would be advantageous to a horse that was just a half length off the early pace, but he faded, was beaten 2 3/4. That kind of leads me to believe that he's not going to be an A-list Kentucky Derby horse. But, hey, I mean, we'll find out in the Holy Bull exactly what Dale Romans and Tammy Fox have in the barn.
I like Rocket Can on the outside, and I'm a massive Dale Romans fan. This is a horse I watched all summer long train, and I think he's kind of maybe not the smartest tool in the shed, and he's just getting it all together. And I think he's finally just about got it all together. And I'm going with the Louis Saez off, Alvarado on factor for Hall of Famer Bill Mott. It'll be Rocket Can on the outside for me.
The only other horse in there, Bill, that I could see, sorry to interrupt there, would be for your wagering purposes and your trifectas and things like that, maybe even exactas, would be the one horse Lord Miles. He's had 2 lifetime starts, even when he broke his maiden in November at Gulfstream by 5 3/4 lengths. He was very green during the running of that race. Well, with the kickback, and he looked like he was stopping around the turn. And he was going to, drop back and run toward the back of the pack. And then he comes again and winds up winning impressively. And then he gets beaten in the Mucho Macho Man. And again, he was very green and running in spots. So they're putting, Safi Joseph is putting the blinkers on Lord Miles. Sometimes it can really improve a horse that's got that sort of greenness to him and running in spots. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Lord Miles run a better race. Don't know if it's going to be good enough to beat Cyclone Mischief, but he should improve.
And he gets Irod Ortiz, which is certainly a major factor in there. At Aqueduct, we're supposed to be very cold this weekend in New York. They have the Withers. Looks like a small field at this point. Arctic Arrogance, a second in the Jerome and second in the Remsen, will likely be the favorite in that spot. So we'll see a little movement on the road to the Kentucky Derby this weekend with the Holy Bull, the Robert B. Lewis, and the Withers.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by XBTV. XBTV is one of the best tools in the game, and I most certainly can attest to that. Let's take a look at 2 Jonathan Thomas trainees. That is Baystorm on the outside and Experienced on the inside. They worked at Palmettos on January the 27th, not just at Santa Anita. We're all the way across the country with XBTV. Now, Baystorm will run in the grade 3 megahertz at Santa Anita Park this weekend, and Experience will run on Friday at Gulfstream. So we're already giving you a leg up on your handicapping. We'll be right back after this message from XBTV.
All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds. Joining a West Point partnership can vault you into the world of instant camaraderie among people surrounding high-class horses and stake action for just a fraction of the cost of trying to do it on your own. You can learn more at westpointtb.com. West Point has a horse right now on the Oaks Trail. Vava ran third in the Untappable in December. She'll be running in the Rachel Alexandra in a couple of weeks at the fairgrounds. And speaking of Horse of the Year, Flightline, part owned by West Point. Zoe, you had a chance to get up close and personal with Flightline this past week.
Yeah, I can tell you he settled in really, really nicely at Lane's End Farm, gets turned out, runs around. They said as soon as they got him to the farm, they could have turned him out in their biggest paddock, and he did not bat an eyelid. Just pure class, settled in very nicely, and looks terrific. You can just see he's just going to blossom into this horse that people are just going to be climbing over each other to breed to. He's a beautiful horse.
And the Remy cartoon of the week is in. And apropos to what's going on, and we started the podcast with Heiza. He's got Heiza, one horse and another. They're in court and they're saying, oh, okay, and trying to settle all these matters and solve all these headaches. So Remy Belloc takes his take on Heiza. Well, that's it for another week's edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast. I want to thank our Green Group guest of the week, Bruce Lunsford, our producer, Patty Wolf, our associate producer, Katie Petruniak, my co-hosts, Randy Moss and Zoe Cadman, as well as our editors, Anthony LaRocca, Leah LaRocca, and Nathan Wilkinson. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.